Okay, so the main idea behind this video is when this video is over, you should be able to be given 2 points and you can write your own equation or create an equation given 2 points. So, just a little overview of what this video is going to go through. We're going to recap what we did yesterday in class, which was we discussed dollar deals. We're not going to go into depth about it, but we're just going to recap a little bit. So when talking about dollar deals, we saw that when I bought one item, I spent $1. That was our scenario. That no matter how many items we bought, every item was worth $1. So if I bought 5 items, I spent $5. If I bought 7 items, I bought $7. So we created the parent function through dollar deals. So we saw that y equals x. So when I bought 8 items, which would be our x, we also saw that we spent $8. So 8 equals 8. We then looked at the Puggly Wuggly scenario, and just to point out that our orange points right here, and here, and here, and up here, those are our dollar deals. We saw that if we bought 10, $10. If we bought 0 items, $0. We bought 2 items, $2. If we bought 5, we spent $5, and so forth. Puggly Wuggly was a different scenario. We saw that if I went to Puggly Wuggly and I bought 1 item, I spent $2. And if I went and bought 2 items, I spent $4. So we saw that every time I bought an item, I spent $2. So each item at Puggly Wuggly was worth $2. So we came up with an equation that would show us that. And so we saw that it was y equals 2x. So every time I plugged in, say, 1 for x, I got that I spent $2. And if I plugged in 2 items, I would get 4, because it'd be 2 times 2, and I spent $4. Then we looked at a more complicated shopping scenario. We saw fancy foods versus local market. So at the local market, to get to the local market, I had to drive there. And so in order to drive there, I had to spend $9 in gas money. And I saw that each item at the local market was $2.50. Now, at Fancy Foods, I could walk there from my house and not spend anything on gas money, but each item at Fancy Foods was $4. So it was a little more pricey for the items there, but it was in walking distance. I didn't have to spend $9 on gas. So Sarah and Brian were arguing about which store is better to go to. So they decided one of them was going to go to the local market, and the other one was going to go to Fancy Foods, and they were going to see which one was better. So we said that Sarah went to the local market, which in this case would be blue, and Brian went to Fancy Foods, and he would be orange. And so they're like, alright, let's compare. So Sarah had to drive all the way out there, and she spent $9 before she even bought a single item. As for Brian, he didn't spend a single penny before he bought any items. So Sarah goes and she buys one item. We see that she spent $11.50 for her very first item. We saw that, yes, each item is worth $2.50, but she also spent an additional $9 to drive out there. And then you see she spent $14 on her second item, and then $16.50 on her third item, $19 on her fourth item, $21.50 on her fifth item, and then at her sixth item she spent $24. So Brian spent $4 on his first item, and then $8, and then $12 for his third item, and then 16, and then 20, and then 24 for his sixth item. So Brian thought that, bought one item, still cheaper. Bought two items, still cheaper. Bought three items, still cheaper. Bought four items, still cheaper than Sarah. Bought five items, still cheaper than Sarah. They got to the sixth item, and they saw they both had the same amount. They were going to spend the same amount. And Brian was confused. He's like, because he totally thought his was going to be better. So we discussed how, for Brian, it'd be best to go to Fancy Foods if you were only buying 5 items, or maybe even 6. But if you're buying more than 6 items, it's better for you to go to the local market because you're going to get more with more money than you would at Fancy Foods. We also wrote equations for Brian and Sarah. So for Brian, we saw that y equals 4x, and for Sarah, we saw that y equals 250x plus 9. So then we drew some conclusions about slope, and we saw that our slope would be the change in cost over change in items. We also saw that if I was given an equation, like perhaps Brian's equation, y equals 4x, we saw that the number in front of the x, or perhaps how much each item cost, was going to be our slope. So in this case, 4 would be our slope. Then we made connections to our y-intercept, and we saw that our y-intercept was how much we had spent before buying any items. So going back to what Sarah had spent $9 before she even bought a single item. So we saw that in her equation, where it was y equals 2.5x plus 9, we saw that the 9 right here would be our y-intercept, because that was how much money she had spent before she had bought a single item. And then we drew conclusions saying that the y-intercept is where your line crosses the y-axis, so when x is equal to 0. Lastly, we put it all together and found an equation of a line. And we saw that m is our slope and our b was our y-intercept. So then when we're given any 2 points and we find the slope and our y-intercept, we could write an equation for the line. The last thing we did was go over an example of when given 2 points, how can I write an equation and how can I relate this to dollar deals. So first off, we're given points 5, 17, and 6, 20. And we said, given 5, 17, we know that 5 is our number of items we bought, and 17 is the cost we spent on those items. And same goes for 620. We know that 6 would be the number of items, which equals 6, and we know that 20 would be our cost of buying 6 items. So now we can go back to what we learned about slope, saying that slope was our change in cost over the change in items. So I'm going to use the little triangle for change. Cost over our change in items. So then we can say that the change in cost is 20 minus 17 over the change in items. We started with this one, so we're going to again start with this one. So 6 minus 5. We saw that that would be 3 over 1. So our slope would be 3. We remember that our equation was y equals mx plus b. So 3 is our m plus b. How do I find b? Well, we discussed that if we plug back in 6 items, so I'm going to take this 6 right here, plug it back in for x. I get 3 times 6, which gives me 18. But it's telling me my total cost is 20. Well, this says 20 equals 18 plus b. Well, how could I get from 18 to 20? Oh, I could add 2. So my b is 2. So y equals 3x plus 2. Does this work for the other one? So I'm going to plug in 5 for x right here. 3 times 5 is 15. Going to add 2. 17. Oh, my y is 17, my total cost. So this equation works. So now I hope when I give you 2 points, you can write your own equation and create your own equation. I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to bring them in to me tomorrow in class or just whenever. You can email them to me, but that's all I have for you. So thanks for watching.